Hey everyone, my name is Matt Phelan and welcome to my kitchen. So I am absolutely gutted to not be in Hong Kong and be with you for this event, which I've absolutely loved today, and the agenda's been brilliant. But I'm so pleased that I can join you from my kitchen. I'm doing probably the most English thing possible because it's still early here, having my English tea. My name is Matt Phelan. I'm head of global happiness at a business called the Happiness Index, and I had a very interesting brief from when I was invited by Anson Bailey, who's also on the speaker bill. When Anson invited me, he said, "It's been a few crazy years in Hong Kong. We're doing this Connected Cities event, and if you could just come on at the end of the day and cheer everyone up." So. I don't know if I can cheer you all up, but what I am going to do is talk about happiness, and I'm also going to give you some data and science behind happiness, and hopefully, I'm going to leave you with one little takeaway today. And if you just take one thing from today and use it in your business or in your city or your organization, that will make me happy. So please message me afterwards. There's a Q&A session, and do let us know what you thought of the presentation. So as we're at home, and you're probably at home, depending on where you are, I want to start the session actually to slow things down a little bit, because sometimes when people think it's the head of global happiness, it's all going to be wah and shouting and everything. So I'm just gonna put a timer on now, and I want everyone that's listening, for the next 30 seconds, and I'll tell you when we're going to start, just to visualize what makes them happy. So 1, 2, 3. Just take this time now to chill, complete silence. Right, so I hope you've got that picture in your head. For me, I'll show you what makes me happy. This is little Fred, my son, and this is little Isabella. They're in bed at the moment. So the reason I've done that is because I want you to have that picture in your head, and I want to talk about things coming up today on various different subjects. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is a happiness, nature or nurture. And the second thing is, can money make you happy? I'd be very surprised if, when you were visualizing that, and keep that vision in your head, if you were just visualizing a bundle of money. And what's interesting, I ask hundreds and thousands of people this in a year around what makes them happy. And I can tell you, every single individual has something different. There's common themes in there, obviously. Some people may say their family, some people may say football, some people may say business. Hopefully some of you will say great conferences like this, but I'm going to come back to that point. So please leave that in there. So today we're going to cover, is happiness nature or nurture? Can money make you happy? We're going to talk about the title of this presentation, which is the first, second, third, and spooky, the fourth dimension of happiness. We're going to talk about happiness and health. We're going to talk about happiness and company performance and business metrics. I'm going to share with you some of the latest data. You can't have a conversation without talking about things like COVID-19 that has impacted people's happiness, and I've got the latest data for you. And then we're going to finish off and get really geeky, and I'm going to talk to you about quantum organizations, and then I'm going to give you one tiny little takeaway at the end. So I should introduce the Happiness Index. We work with companies across the world on the real basic principle that if your employees are happy, your customers will be happy and you'll perform better as a business. But don't take my word for it. We're going to go through the data. I'm going to go through the science today, right up to the latest neuroscience. The latest number is we operate in about 82 different countries across the globe. And one of the most beautiful statistics I have for you, which is going to blow your mind, which is, now don't get too excited with this stat, 100% of your employees are human beings. And I say it with a smile because so many people forget when they design cities, when they design their programs at work for their employees, they forget that basic principle. And I'm going to come back to that principle in a second. So can money make you happy? Money can make you happy, yes, but to a point. If we just use US dollars, just to keep it simple, the latest number is about $85,000 a year. And the reason for that is if you're in a deprived country, obviously if you don't have clean water, and then you do have clean water, that type of thing has a huge increase on your happiness. But once you get to first world countries where lots of those things are catered for, happiness starts to actually plateau out at a certain level of income. And you can probably all imagine that in your life, that once you get a nice flat, once you get a nice car, once you go on a nice holiday, all you're really doing is getting a nicer version of the car and a nicer version of that coat. And those things are great, but they don't necessarily make you happy. So the answer to can money make you happy is yes, but to a point, which is why when we look at all our employee data and we see millions of employee data points every day, money is never the thing that employees are talking about when it comes to it. Yes, do get paid your market rate, but it's not going to make you happy. And I hate to bust that myth for you. So is happiness nature or nurture? Now there's multiple studies into this, and hopefully I will be able to share that afterwards. But what you're really looking at is about 50% of your happiness is based on your DNA, which is good and bad because 50% is a lot. But what that means is 50% is around your own outlook and your environment. And and this is why I love the conference that everyone's put together today on connected cities, because you can't control your DNA, but you can design a city that makes people happier. So we've got 50% to play with. So is happiness nature or nurture? It's both. Moving forward, the title of this presentation, the 4 dimensions of happiness. I just want to take you through the first 3, which are the most most known about. So the first type of happiness is when you heard that I was talking, you probably thought, oh God, who's this crazy clown? And most people, when they think of happiness, they think about like the up and down happiness that you get in a day. So you might find out that you've had a job promotion, or you've got some good news. Just got to have a little sip of my tea. And that's what we call related to mood. And that's one element, that's one dimension. The second is what we call flow. So if you think back now and you visualize when you've worked in a really good team in your career, you wouldn't necessarily say it's like an up and down feeling. We would call it flow. It's just, sports team would call it when you're in the zone. The third element is what we would call purpose. So at the moment in the UK, the NHS, so our National Health Service, are doing an amazing job at looking after people through this global pandemic. And that's called purpose happiness, because the NHS at the moment have got a real purpose because they feel like they're making a real difference in society. So it creates a level of happiness. Now, modern psychology, that's where it takes us to. It takes us up to positive psychology, but the bit that's missing, the 4th dimension, the bit that I want to reveal to you today, is what we call connectivity and heart. Because the first 3, most of that psychology was pre-neuroscience, but now we are being able to see the influence on the people around you, the people in your team, the people in your family, and how their happiness can impact your happiness. It was almost scientifically impossible to do that before artificial intelligence, neuroscience scans, brain scans, body scans. But we've got all that now. And we're now seeing a 4th dimension of happiness, which is about the relationships and the connectivity between us. And that is why I absolutely love the content in this conference, because so much is talking about it. So it means all the things that we talked about today, they're so important because they're a 4th element of happiness that we really need to be aware of. So just want to touch on neuroscience a little bit, and how we've managed to discover the fourth dimension of happiness. So if we use a simplified model of the brain, when we're stressed, like lots of people have been in the COVID period, our brains go back into what we call the reptilian bit. So many of you know that as fight and flight. Now, and I bring this up because it's our job as professionals and entrepreneurs and people in our teams to actually get people out of that fear bit, because the bit that makes us human beings, so the next bit up is the mammal bit, and in here, which is our frontal cortex, that's the bit that makes us human. And the bit that differentiates us as human beings in that area that is unique to us is our level of creativity. So the reason that's important and why that's related to happiness is if you build environments, whether that be a city, an office space, lots of people are working remotely as well. So it's still important that you look after someone's environment when they're working at home. You need to keep in your mind that it is your job to create that environment to help people thrive at work. Because if they don't, micromanagers would be a good example of that. Someone standing over someone, so overbearing management. All you're doing is you're pushing people into the fight or flight reptilian part of their brain, and you are losing the bit that the human being is employed for, and the bit they're brilliant at, which is their creativity. Happiness and health. I just want to very quickly talk to you about a really serious side of happiness. And the study I'm talking about is by Michael A. West from Lancaster University and Jeremy F. Dawson at the University of Sheffield, both in the UK. And they did a study of the NHS, and before we're talking about how happiness could improve a city or a business. So in the National Health Service in the UK, they have proven that happier staff leads to better patient care, which leads to lower mortality rates. And I say that slowly and seriously because when I started getting into happiness, I thought, this is great. As an entrepreneur, I can use this in my business to help other businesses do well and perform better. I didn't realize the seriousness of it, because if you think of a cafe, if you think of a staff member that is looked after and then they look after you as a customer, you go back, great. But actually, the same runs true within a hospital. So if you're going to a hospital where the staff are treated well, you have more chance of surviving that visit to the hospital. And I'm just sharing that with you. One, because of the times we're in, and it's a great study. Do go and check it out. I'll ask if we can share all the notes so that you can check that out. But I love that point because it makes people realize how serious happiness is, and it stops people seeing it as this fluffy thing. So that's happiness and health. Is happiness and business performance linked? So it's a great study by Alex Edmonds, who's a professor of finance at London Business School. And Alex took 28 years of American financial data, and he took basically the 100 best companies to work for study, which you can check out, and compared those 100 companies to their peers in their industry over a 28-year period. I told you there's going to be lots of stats. I am a geek. And they found that the companies that with higher employee satisfaction were outperforming on the stock market their peers by 2.3 to 3.8% per year over a 28-year period. That is a stock return of 89% to 184% cumulative over that period. So if anyone ever says to you happiness doesn't belong in business, check that study out. Our data consistently shows it on a day-to-day basis, but I just wanted to bring that one out because it's so linked to stock market, because there's learnings there for the managers, but there's also learning there for anyone that invests in the stock market. So do check that out. So the latest data, there's absolutely no getting away from it. Globally, happiness dropped on a 10-point scale by roughly about 2 points, which is huge. And as I've stated before, happiness leads to performance. So a lot of people you will hear are seeing and speak to your friends. They're saying things like they feel more lethargic, they feel tired. Symptoms totally separate to COVID, but many related to lockdown and so on. And it's so important for leaders of businesses to understand the role that they can play. Like me, I've got 2 young children. If my colleagues didn't understand that I now need to do school drops and teaching from home and all this kind of stuff, I wouldn't be able to perform at work. I wouldn't be able to join you guys to do this session today. So there's no getting away from that. But what can we learn from it? So there's a very famous change curve out there called the Kubler-Ross. Check it out. But we've done a bit of an update on the Kubler-Ross with our head of neuroscience, Clive Hyland. And what we found with it is that it's really important to understand where people are in the change curve. So what often governments do, or CEOs of a business, they try and speak rationally to their audience. But unless your audience are in a rational state of mind, they're not going to be able to receive those messages. So we say there's 4 stages: there's instinctive, emotional, reflective, and rational. And it's really important to understand where you are, because when we look at the COVID period, people have gone through this sweep of emotions, and then leaders have tried to communicate in different ways without understanding where they are. So what I'm coming on to here is how important emotions are. For too long, emotions have been told that they stay at home. That's your home life here, and this is your work life here. No such thing. Your brain doesn't work like that. Emotions belong at work. And guess what? The office hours. Your brain cannot work office hours. Even if your contract says you work 8 to 6 days a week, at one of the top firms in your country, or wherever that be, your brain doesn't know that. And anyone who's been for a long walk or had that best idea in the shower, it's your brain is working 24 hours a day, and so many ways that organizations are organized are just out of date. They go back to sort of like the Victorian 1900 periods. Like, the whole way that workplaces are structured just do not fit with what we know about the brain now. My next point is from COVID is actually, and related to happiness, is something that we've discovered called the emotional deficit. And here we say mind the gap, because when people went into lockdown and they couldn't go to work, they couldn't see their friends, couldn't see their family, what people experienced was an emotional deficit. So in the Happiness Index platform, we noticed, and again, we're collecting data from over 86 countries, so this is consistent across the globe. The amount people wanted to feed back to their company trebled. That is huge. Statistically, that is huge. So as soon as we hit COVID, people want to communicate times 3. That is a huge difference for any mathematicians that are listening. And the reason I say that is I'm coming on to one of my last points, which is, in any times of uncertainties, the role of leadership is to communicate more. Understand, listen, and communicate. But remember, communication is a 2-way street. And I said I'd get really geeky at the end. So I'm going to talk about some quantum organizations. And I'm just going to read something out. Like, why is it called quantum? Just to bring everyone up to speed. The word quantum derives from the Latin meaning how great or how much. The discovery that particles are discrete packets of energy with wave-like properties led to the branch of physics dealing with atomic and subatomic systems, which is today called quantum mechanics. Now, I know it's Monday and it's the end of the day, but the reason I bring up quantum organizations, oh, look at that, Siri on my Apple phone is listening to us. The reason I bring that up is the perception of leadership is around command and control. What we know now from real-time data, AI, all the neuroscience stuff that we've touched on today, is that command and control organization of businesses is dying and won't work in the future. And the reason is because we're starting to understand that actually the role of leadership is about managing energy. And actually, I used the wrong word there, channeling energy, because you can't manage energy. All you can do is channel it. So the leadership role of anyone out there who's a CEO, HR director, I personally believe from our data, you have two jobs, is to be part of the vision and the values in your company. That you are the guardian of the vision and the values. The rest of it, thank you, Siri. The rest of it, Siri, thank you. The rest is functional stuff. Your job as a leader is vision and values. And a quick lesson in history. I studied geography back in the day. If you look at the original maps, if you look at some original maps made in China of the world, and you find some maps in Europe of the world, one of the things that you will find about the maps is that if you look at a European map, whatever they put on the edges of the map are monsters. If you look at a Chinese map and go to the edge of the world and look at Europe, they annotate and use monsters. And the reason I bring this visualization up is that your company culture and the culture of your city is the same. People fear uncertainty. So what I would recommend to you on all these things like happiness is by finding out more about it, and you can use the happiness index or any other way of doing it, but understanding how people feel in your company or your city will give you so much more knowledge about how to lead and about how to run your business. And if you don't, you're just in the dark and it's just going to be fear. And again, we know from earlier in the presentation that if you're in fear mode, you're going to be in that reptilian part of your brain, which means you're going to be in fight or flight. And we need human beings to get into this frontal cortex here of the creativity part. And that is the threat for lots of jobs out there. Lots of jobs will be automated. That is the reality of the world we live in now. But if I've given you one bit of career advice, is to just learn how to stay in that state of creativity, because that, and this comes from a geek who loves his AI, that is the thing that we need to avoid. Otherwise, there is that possibility that your role could be replaced by automation. So stay in that frontal cortex. So don't worry, I'm coming up to summary, people. It is the end of the day. So I'm just going to leave you with 4 points, and I'm going to give you one little secret at the end. So just remember that happiness is 50-50 on nature and nurture, okay? So that's still 50% that you can control yourself. The emotional deficit is real, people. People don't know whether COVID's going to come back, stop or not, or whatever. But what I do know is that you need to listen to your people, and that doesn't have to be at work. That can be at home. Please just remember, communications is a two-way sport. Point 3, the 4th dimension of happiness is about connection, and that's why I've loved this conference, and I was so happy and excited to be invited to speak today. I hope you've really enjoyed it. I hope you've learned, and I hope you send me loads of questions. If you think it was rubbish, just tell me, and I'm going to leave you with one little secret. So no matter what country we study happiness in, one thing always comes up that makes employees happier wherever that is in the world, and that is a heartfelt thank you. And I've added the word heartfelt in there because so many people, when they hear that, think they can automate it. Oh, I'll send an email out. I will automate an email going out to my team once a week that says thank you. It has to come from the heart. And just like I made you visualize that moment of happiness at the beginning of this session, you will remember how you felt when someone actually turned to you on a Friday after you've absolutely worked your butt off all week and said, thank you. I really appreciate the time and effort that you've put into this company. So that leaves me with one thing to say, which is just thank you. I just appreciate so much being invited. I hope you haven't been geeked out too much by me. And I hope you enjoy the rest of Connected Cities. And my last wish is that hopefully I will be in Hong Kong with you all next year. Thank you.